This video is for mental methods for division. There are two strategies you can use for this. One is having both sides, and the other is splitting the dividend, or the thing you're dividing, into friendlier numbers that you can divide by the divisor. So I will show you some examples of each. And in Mathletics, if you're not sure which one to use, you can go to that little I in the top right-hand corner, and it will give you an example of a similar question and tell you which strategy to use. The first strategy, there probably won't be as many of these, but it's handy to know. This strategy is having both sides. So the dividend and the divisor. And I'm going to show you why it works. So let's say this big rectangle represents 264 square units. And we're dividing it into 8 parts. Well, visually, this is what each part would look like. So just keep in mind that that's about the size of the area of the square if you're dividing it into 8 parts. Now, since these are both divisible by 2, let's split that in half to make it easier to solve. So if I split 264 divided by 2, that's 132. 8 split in 2 is 4. And with our model here, if I split both of these in 2, that means I'm taking away half. So instead of doing 264 divided by 8, I've got half that amount, and I only have to divide it into 4. And notice these pieces are still the same size, so our answer is still going to be the same. Now, these are still even, so we can divide it by 2 again. So 132 divided by 2. 100 split in 2 is 50, and then 32, I have to write these down. If you can't keep all this in your head, don't worry. So 100 split in 2 is 50, 32 split in 2 is 16. So half of the whole thing is 66. And then 4 split in 2 is 2. So now we have 66 divided by 2, and I've halved this again. So now we're dealing with this. And if this is 66 split in half, I know that each piece is 33. So we've solved 264 divided by 8 by splitting what we're dividing and how many pieces we're dividing it into by 2 each time. So that is the halving strategy. The split into friendly parts is kind of what I did with this 132 divided by 2. I split it into 132. So I'll show you some more examples of that. Okay, splitting into friendly parts. Let's start with 72 divided by 12. You might have this one memorized, but if you don't, here's an example of how to split it up. So this is our model. This whole thing represents 72 square units. We're going to split it up into 12 parts. So I've made strips. So each strip is one of the 12 parts. And the area of each strip is really our answer. Now, I want to split it into parts that are friendlier. So I know 72 can be split into 60 and 12. I know 60 divided by 12, and I know 12 divided by 12. So I'm going to split it up like that. So I'm going to say, okay, this is my 60 part, and this is my 12 part. And then each strip you're just splitting into separate parts, and we'll add them together at the end to get our answer. So 60 divided by 12. We're going to do that first, then we'll do 12 divided by 12. And we will add our answers together. So we'll add this part of the strip plus that part of the strip, and that will give us our answer. So 60 divided by 12, I just have that memorized. I know it's 5. And then 12 divided by 12 is 1. So 5 plus 1 is 6. That means 5 plus 1, this whole strip is 6, and that's our answer. So this method is split this number into parts that are easily divisible by 12. And you might have to do some playing around to find the right numbers, but that's part of the fun. Okay, let's try this one. 160 divided by 5. Well, in the last question we did 60 divided by 12 is 5, so that means 60 divided by 5 is 12. So I know that. So I'm going to split this into 160. And then I'll divide each of those by 5, and then add them together for the final strip. So 100 divided by 5 is 20. 60 divided by 5 is 12. So I add 20 and 12, and I get 32. So 160 divided by 5 is 32. Last example for the splitting into parts. 256 divided by 8. 56 and 8 sounds familiar. 8 times 7 is 56. So I'm going to split this into 256. 200 divided by 8 isn't really something that I have memorized, but if you think of quarters, if you have $2 and you split it into 8, that means you would have quarters. So 200 divided by 8 is 25. 56 divided by 8 is 7, so I have to do 25 and 7. Again, if you can do all of this in your head, that's awesome. I personally have to write it down because I can't remember this much at once. So it's okay to write it down. 7 plus 5 is 12. 2 plus 1 is 3. So the answer to this question is also 32. Remember, if you're not sure which strategy to use, look at that little eye in the top right corner of the Mathletics, and they'll give you a hint. And take your time. You might have to try a few things. If your two numbers still don't work, just go back and try another couple of numbers.